Hi, this is the last part of the snake coding tutorial. In this part we're going to have a look at intersecting the snake with itself and the snake going off the screen, which case both end the game. So let's get started with that. So in the last episode we had a small bug, and that's because I can't type properly. So what happened was the snake was getting bigger by 2 every time when it should have only been getting bigger by 1. So what happened was when we were adding a new segment to the snake here, I was pushing 2 items onto the snake when in fact it should have been 1 array containing 2 items. So that will fix that issue. So I did it right in my notes, I just did it wrong while coding it. So it all works fine now. So let's get started with the death of the snake. So I'm going to add a new variable, let alive equals false, true. We want true actually, don't we? The game starts with the snake being alive, and then at some point the snake will meet an untimely end, and then it will not be alive. So when it's alive, the game can update, and when it's dead, it can't. So let's go to the update method, and we're going to say if not alive, it is alive at the moment, then we're going to just simply return out of this statement. So that means when the snake is not alive, when we get to this update method, it will come down here and then it will read this line and it'll say if the snake's not alive, return. So it will go back up here to the next line without running all the update code. So now we can stop it updating. I mean, nothing will happen, we haven't implemented it yet, but the logic is there for us to now stop the game. So to actually detect if the snake is going out of the screen, we could come down here. I'll just check I'm doing it in the right place in my tutorial. Yeah, so here we could say if the X position, which is the snake, the new position of the snake head, if the X position is less than 0, so the edge of the game board is 0, so it starts with the first square at 0, and if the snake position went to -1, that would mean it'd be out of the screen. So if the snake head is less than 0, it's out the screen, or if the snake head is more than the board size. Now the board size was 20, but what we do have to remember here is that there are 20 squares and the first square is on position 0. So that means the last square of the board is square 19. That makes 20 squares, and square 20 is actually the 21st square, and it would be outside of the board. So the board size is 20, but we need to take 1 off to make sure, because we're checking if it's bigger than it. So if that's true, it will end the game. We also need to check, however, the Y position. So same thing, if Y is less than 0 or Y is more than the board size -1. So if any of those cases are true, because it's an OR statement, it only needs 1 of them to be true, we can end the game. So alive equals false. Now let's run that, and the game has actually ended, but the game ended with the snake off the screen. So let's just check the game did end. So if I type alive, it says that variable is equal to false, which it is because the game ended. So that's worked, but we just can't see it because the snake's not on the screen. So I'm going to cheat and I'm going to get this code here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to move the snake back to where it was before it went off the screen. So I'm just going to do that backwards. And now what will happen is the snake will go until it stops. I'm just checking all 4 directions. Yep. There we go. So the snake now stops and the game ends. We could do with another indicator that the game's ended, and you can do what you want here. You know, make the snake curl up and something happen to it. I'm just going to change its colour. So that's likely to happen in the draw snake routine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if alive. So that will return true. So that means that this part of the code will run. If true, set the snake to this colour. Else, if it's not true, let's invert this colour. So FFOO FF, and that will be magenta. So now we've got the snake stopping or appearing to stop and then changing colour. So that's the board limits of the game. I mean, you don't have to have board limits. You might have it where the snake will come back onto the other side. That's easy enough to do. When the snake goes off the screen, you just set the snake position back to 0 and then it will come on the other end. So you could do that. However you want to develop the game is up to you. You might want to add more effects and things. You might want to have a score pop up or a message or buttons to restart. There's lots of potential for different things to happen in your game. The next thing then is to allow the snake to intersect with itself. So we're going to do that here after we've checked in the update method. We've checked if it's still alive. We've checked, we've moved the snake. So before we do anything else to it, let's check that it's not intersecting with itself. So the way we do that is we're going to loop over all the segments in the snake, and we're going to check if that segment is the same as the head. So we're not going to loop over the head, we're just going to loop over all the rest of it from 1 to however long it is. And we'll say if that head section has the same coordinates as that body section, then the head is touching the body. So let's do 4. We'll say let I equal 1. And we're going to do a loop like this. I is less than snake dot segment list dot length. And then we're going to say I plus plus. So we use the letter I for iterator, which means to sort of go over increasing each loop. It's iterating, and it's going to go one at a time from 1 to however long the snake is. Now, before, when we checked each segment, we used this syntax where we use let segment of. We can't use this because we don't want to include the head, which is 0. We want to loop over all of them after the head. And all we're going to do is we're going to say if x is equal to snake dot segment list, and we want segment list I, so it'll be segment 1, and then it'll be segment 2, and then it'll be segment 3, and we want the x position within that segment. So we looked at that before. So if the x position of the head and the x position of each segment intersect, we also need to check with and y is equal to snake.segmentList I, and this time it's the y coordinate, so it's 1. And this time I'm using an AND statement rather than an OR statement, because with the intersection we want the x and the y at the same time. We don't want one or the other, we need them both. So this time I'm using x and y. So if the x coordinate and the y coordinate of the head are the same as any of the segments in the body, that means the head must be on the same square as the body. So we can set alive to be false. So now we should be able to test that the game works. I don't know what happened there. That seems to be working. I wonder if I think I deleted this bracket when I was testing something accidentally. That shouldn't be in your code. Right, let's test this out. Oh, I've pressed caps lock by accident, so that's why that's not working. And then I died. It's too hard for me, this game. So that's working better now. So if I press up when I'm going down, the snake will die. When you're just one piece, it won't affect you, but when you're two pieces, it does. So let's try that again. So let's see if we can get a longer snake. You could have a high scoreboard. You could do potentially all sorts with this. You could use the local storage to store high scores. You could have different levels. There's quite a lot of things you could do to this game to make it more interesting. At the moment we've got apples. You could have something else. You could have things to avoid. You could have a bigger map. You could have a smaller map. You could have a map that changes size. Right, let's intersect the snake with itself. There we go. So that appears to be working. So there are lots of scope for you to modify this project. So you're going to be designing maybe a menu, a proper ending to the game, a way to restart the game. You're going to be looking at some on-screen help. You're going to be looking at adding some different features. And I've just drawn boxes, but where we're drawing this snake, you could, instead of fill rectangle, you could use the draw image, like we did in episode 1. So you could actually draw a snake, and you might even be able to figure out how to make the snake head face different directions. There's lots of potential things you could do. Some things could be really complex, some things could be simple. You could just make the game much more interesting and fun. Just have a go with it, see what you can do. But we've all now got the same starting basis from which to work on. Some of the code I've kept simple. It could be optimized, it could be improved, it could be developed. Certainly some of the functions you could do more to this, but now it's over to you to do something with this. And if you get stuck, then you just give me a shout and I'll see if I can give you a bit of guidance. So thanks a lot, that was fun.